All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the psychology behind a relationship dynamic that, well, it pretty much flips everything we think we know about power, jealousy, and even love right on its head. So let's just jump right in with a question that, on the surface, sounds kind of nuts, right? What if jealousy, that green-eyed monster we're all taught to run from, what if it could actually be a source of arousal, a real turn-on? And look, we're not just talking about some fringe fantasy here. What we're really exploring is a whole psychological ecosystem. It's incredibly sophisticated, with its own set of rules, roles, and, its own unique emotional wiring. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the big paradox at the heart of all this. We're looking at a completely consensual arrangement that can totally flip power dynamics, actually transform jealousy into something else, and get this, it can paradoxically make the relationship's core even stronger. How wild is that? So to really wrap our heads around how this even works, we've got to look at its three foundational pillars. Think of it like the architecture that holds the whole thing up. All right, the first pillar is what's called a power exchange. And this is super important. This isn't about weakness or one person being dominated. Nope. It's a conscious, negotiated agreement where one partner chooses to hand over some of that traditional control, allowing the other partner to have more sexual freedom. Next up, we have the emotional core of this whole thing. And it's a concept you may not have heard of, compersion. Simply put, it's pretty much the exact opposite of jealousy. It's this feeling of genuine joy and satisfaction you get from seeing your partner happy, even if that happiness is with someone else. And this chart, wow, it really lays it all out, doesn't it? Compersion is all about focusing on your partner's joy, and it actually expands the relationship because it's built on trust and security. Jealousy, as we know, is the opposite. It zeroes in on a personal threat, it's meant to protect boundaries, and it usually comes from a place of insecurity and fear. It is literally a complete rewiring of your emotional response. Which, of course, brings us to that final crucial pillar, trust. And I can't stress this enough. It is the absolute bedrock of this entire dynamic. We're talking about a level of faith, a level of profound communication that goes way, way beyond what you'd find in a typical relationship. But this trust isn't just one simple thing. It's multi-layered. You've got practical trust, like, are you going to follow the rules and practice safe sex? Then there's emotional trust, the belief that your primary bond isn't going to get weaker. And maybe the deepest level, vulnerability trust, being able to share your most profound insecurities and knowing you won't be judged for them. Okay, so we have the architecture, the pillars. But how does all this stuff actually turn into arousal? What's the engine that makes this all tick? Let's get into the mechanics of it. Well, a huge part of it is the erotic transformation of jealousy itself. Think about it. You take that intense, raw emotion, but you remove the destructive part, the betrayal, because everything is consensual. Suddenly, all that powerful emotional energy has nowhere to go but into arousal. It's reframed into excitement. And then there's this fascinating thing called the humiliation paradox. It sounds counterintuitive, right? But when you consent to an experience, when you are in control of your own submission, what would normally be a negative feeling can become incredibly erotically charged. It's the safety and the choice that completely transforms it. And this quote really just nails it. It says that context, meaning, and consent can turn an experience from something traumatic into something ecstatic. It's proof that it's not the act itself that matters, but the whole framework of trust and intention you build around it. So you might be wondering, how on earth do people manage all these intense emotions? Well, the answer is simple, but it's not easy. Communication. We're talking constant, radical, next-level communication. And it's so vital, we're going to break it down into 3 phases. First up, you have the work you do before anything even happens. This is the pre-encounter negotiation. And believe me, it has to be exhaustive. This means talking about everything. The why, what are our motivations, the what, setting crystal clear boundaries for literally every single thing that could happen, and even the what ifs, planning for things going wrong emotionally. You got to have a solid blueprint before you even think about starting construction. Okay, so that's before. Now what about during the encounter? Well, this is where communication gets a lot more subtle and it has to happen in real time. Couples will often have entire systems of nonverbal cues like hand gestures, or they'll use quick verbal check-ins.
It's all about constantly monitoring everyone's emotional state and making sure that consent isn't just a one-time thing. It's continuous, all while trying not to kill the mood.
And then we get to what happens after it's all over. And honestly, this might just be the most important phase for the health of the relationship. It's the post-encounter processing, often called aftercare.
This is the crucial time for an emotional debrief, for validating feelings, all the feelings. It's when you refine boundaries for the future, and most importantly, you reaffirm the primary relationship. This is how you make sure the experience brings you closer together instead of pushing you apart. When you really boil it all down, what's happening here is an act of rewriting some of our most deeply ingrained social and gender scripts. It's a pretty radical act. I mean, just look at this comparison. For men, it can be a total liberation from those old, rigid ideas that say manhood is all about possession and control. Instead, manhood can be about facilitating your partner's joy. Jealousy isn't proof of love. Compersion becomes proof of trust. It completely reframes what it means to be a loving, supportive partner.
And that's why this whole thing goes so much deeper than just the bedroom. It's not just about a specific sexual act. It's about fundamentally challenging our very definition of what a committed relationship is supposed to look like.
So all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it? When we look at a dynamic like this, it forces us to ask, are relationships meant to follow a pre-written script that society hands us? Or is the goal to have the courage to design our own blueprint, one that truly, authentically works for us?